Another edition of Retired Voices of Reason. I'm one of your hosts, Sam K. Jackson, along with my boy, Richard Smokey Garrett and LJ Law Johnson. We got another hot discussion for you today. We're going to try to make it interesting and keep this thing going. So, as usual, we want to try to get some insight from my boy Smoke to get us started. What you got, Smoke?
Let me make sure this thing out. Let me make sure this thing. You got Facebook?
I have Facebook.
All right. I'm gonna start out with show you guys. I've seen a couple of people posted on our page, Retired Voices of Reason, regarding the 15-year-old Kwawan Bobby Charles, the 15-year-old that was missing in Louisiana, that ended up being found days later in a field, a sugarcane field, dead. Family said his face looked like Emmett Till's. People familiar with that know he was very disfigured, lips, face. And they claimed it was a drowning initially. They said that the aquatic life, fish, turtles, etc., had ate on the face, and that's what caused that. So let me give some background just in case catch everybody up to speed. Let's see, Bobby Charles was a quiet 15-year-old who went missing in rural Louisiana on October 30th. His body was discovered days later in a sugarcane field 20 miles from his home. The sheriff's department told his family that the boy had drowned. Charles' family calls the claim bogus and says that photos showed Bobby Charles' face was horribly disfigured when he was found. They believe his death could have been racially motivated and that law enforcement failed to act in the hours after they reported their son missing. 2 weeks after Bobby went missing, the Iberia Parish Sheriff's Office released a statement saying that they are investigating suspicious circumstances and Bobby's parents are still looking for answers. He said, we believe that if it had been had he been of a different color, this would have been taken a lot more seriously. And they stated that through their attorney, Ronald Haley. See, his father says that police had visited a friend of Bobby's and his mother, both who are white, who are alleged to be the last people who saw him before he died. But the sheriff has not commented on whether they are communicating with the mother or the son, nor has suspects been named in the case, nor has it been designated as a homicide. So here's what we know right now. Bobby's parents reported his disappearance from his father's house in Baldwin, Louisiana, which he recently moved. And Baldwin is like 115 miles west of New Orleans in Louisiana. He had just started the new school. His father, Kenneth Jackson, said that the Baldwin police department took a report, but they gave no indication over the next few days that they were searching for Bobby nor actively investigating his disappearance. And instead, they said that he might have gone to a football game, and then they asked if he had a troubled past. His family said that Bobby was friends with a 17-year-old named Gavin Irwin and Irwin's mother, Janet, in a neighboring parish, which is Iberia Parish, before he died. His father told the Post that they learned through a third party that the Irvins had picked Bobby up the day he went missing around 3 p.m. while the father was at the store. Father said that neither him nor his mother knew the Irvins, who were both white, nor had they given him permission to take their son. And on November 17th, now they went missing on the 30th. On the 17th, the Baldwin police released the surveillance footage, which they say Bobby got picked up in the car on October 30th. And in the video, it shows that a figure, which appeared to be Bobby, sitting by the side of the road, waiting outside the home before getting up to run toward a car that pulled up into the driveway. 2 individuals appeared to lead the car. Eventually, 3 people got back in and they drove off. According to the Assistant Chief Sam Wise, the police said that they believed that before re-entering the car, Bobby and the 2 individuals presumed to be the Irvins, they went to the backyard of his home to play with Bobby's dog, which Gavin Irvin had given him. There was no signs of a kidnapping or abduction at that time, said the police chief. So Bobby's body was found on this November the 3rd. He's reported missing on the 30th and is found on the 3rd. His father, Jacko, said that the family, accompanied by police, visited the Irvins, the family who had picked him up on November 3rd, after Bobby had been missing for 4 days. Gavin, which is the 17-year-old, confirmed that he and Bobby had been together on October 30th, then said that Bobby later left in the day. Then Gavin said that Bobby got up and said he was leaving. And then Gavin asked Bobby where he was going, and after that, he disappeared. The Iberia Parish police found Bobby's body in a sugarcane field later on that same day, in the small community of Lauraville, which is not far from the Irvin's home. The sheriff's office said that told the family that water was found in his lungs and that he had drowned. But the family said photos of his body showed that his face was incredibly mangled. One of the family spokespersons said that Roxanne Nelson, which is one of the relatives, said that the mother, Roxanne Nelson, ran from the viewing room when she saw his body. She said that the teen appeared so disfigured that his teeth was visible outside of his mouth. She also said that it looks like he had been tortured, and the mother has since shared photos of his body online to call attention to Bobby's death and to pressure law enforcement to act. And that's similar to what Emmett Till's mother did when she received Emmett Till's body back in Chicago, and she insisted that he had an open casket so that the world could see what happened to her son. Law enforcement officials have now said they are investigating Bobby's death as a homicide, although they have not declared it a homicide officially. So I don't know how that works. You investigate a homicide, but you don't call it a homicide investigation. It said any case involving someone found deceased in this matter is treated as a homicide investigation, the Iberia Parish Sheriff Tommy Romero said in a statement. The Sheriff's Office has not named a suspect, but officers have spoken to people they believe have been with Bobby before he died. He said that we interviewed the same individuals and currently tracking their whereabouts, although they declined to confirm that they had spoken with the Irvins. And the neighbors of the Irvins said that they were evicted from their mobile home this week, well, earlier in the week, for unknown reasons. And then law enforcement released a preliminary autopsy report, said that he died contributory drowning related, and the scratches and wounds appeared to be aquatic activity. The boy had not sustained injuries before his death. But the family attorney states that there's no more than 2 feet of water in the area where Bobby was found. They stated if in fact he had died of drowning, and we're saying that if, we're calling into question how exactly that could have happened. How can someone who's 5'6", typically drown in 2 feet of water? No, not unless there's another cause associated with that. The Charles family ordered their own independent autopsy. The results of that in the autopsy was leaked on November 16th, and that allegedly confirmed that his injuries were consistent with drowning. Although the report declined to definitively state a cause of death, it found no pre-mortem trauma or natural disease. So before he died, they didn't see anything that was possibly caused that injury. The family is more interested in the manner of his death. And they say if scientific explanation is drowning, then let's narrow down the focus how he came to drown in the sugarcane field. He was an able-bodied person before he ended up face down in water and that was ankle deep. Family says police didn't act quickly enough after his disappearance. They criticized police for not alerting the local news and say that an Amber Alert was not sent. The family says the Baldwin police told them, now Baldwin police are the ones that the jurisdiction that Bobby and his father lived in. And the Iberia County, that's the sheriff's department, that's 20 miles from the Baldwin Police Department, or that jurisdiction. So the Baldwin police told them that Bobby was entered into an Amber Alert database that must be activated by the state police, who apparently determined that the circumstances didn't meet the threshold to trigger one. And it says it begs, I'm sure the family attorney said it begs the question, had the protocols been followed, would Bobby be alive today? Once this became public, almost every news station said, we had no idea a child was even missing. And they added that the authorities hadn't even tried to ping his cell phone until 3 days after he disappeared. And they said that's how they knew where to narrow the search, is after they pinged his cell phone. He said, I want the lady who came to get my son without my permission, his dad's permission, to be held accountable, the mother said. She said she took him to her house. He was alive and well then when he left here, and now he's dead. The ACLU of Louisiana is joining the family in their calls for justice. They said the disrespect and lack of transparency demonstrated by local officials in response to his tragic and suspicious death is unacceptable. And they demand a full and transparent investigation into the circumstances surrounding his death. Now, if you guys have smartphones like I do, you know all times of day and night, the Amber Alert goes off. I know it does here in Texas. I mean, I've seen 4-year-olds with parents that don't have primary custody of a child, 17-year-olds, 16, 15-year-olds. So I don't know what the criteria was, but you would think a 15-year-old after 24 hours, that's kind of, especially in a new city, I don't know. Sam, shake your head. Go ahead, Sam.
I've been retired for 8 years, so I don't know if the reporting criteria for missing persons have changed, nor have the criteria for the issuance of an Amber Alert have changed. But from what I can recall, just a child reported missing under no suspicious circumstances, that I know does not call for an Amber Alert. And so if this child is reporting missing and you can see on video that he went willingly, that is not an abduction. They didn't say anything about his mental health status. They didn't say anything about him, being chronic alcohol or drug abuse. So there was nothing outside of my child didn't come home tonight that meets the criteria for an Amber Alert. Now, does it meet the criteria for documentation? Of course it does. Does it meet the criteria for that missing person report to get forwarded to a missing person detective? Of course it does. Does it meet the criteria for it to get followed up, as a part of that detective's case log? Of course it does. So, the issue that the family attorney is making about the Amber Alert, could it have changed the circumstance? I think it's a reach. Now we want to get back to what happened post missing person, then the circumstances do become suspicious. Now you're venturing into some criminal investigation, so I'm all aboard with that. But all investigations takes time to conduct a thorough investigation. And unfortunately, and today with social media and every attorney wanting to get free publicity by putting it out there and making everything questionable, I understand that there's a tragic incident and the parents have questions, and those questions needs to be answered. But I think it takes time for an investigation, because everything you pointed out, Stevie Wonder could see that it makes you say, that it does have some questions that needs to be answered, and I think a thorough investigation will answer those questions. And if in time, given the proper amount of time, they're not answered, then you put pressure on the investigating agency and try to get something done. But I think right now it's a little bit premature. But it does have questionable circumstances, but I don't agree with the Amber Alert changing the circumstances because it didn't meet the criteria.
All right, so here's my question. At the time that the police were called to do the initial missing persons report, nobody had seen the video. Am I correct on that?
Correct.
I think I think that, Smoke, you have to answer that. Did they get the video immediately, or did that come a day or so later?
That came afterwards. That came like a day or so later.
Okay.
Okay, so if the video came later, then at the moment that juvenile was reported missing, that and there was foul play suspected, that should have triggered.
There was no
Amber
foul
Alert.
play. There was no, forced entry into the house. There was no note that was left. There was nothing to suggest foul play.
Okay, so we just got a missing juvenile.
That's all you had initially.
Okay. Yeah, I think the trigger an Amber Alert has got to be some foul play suspected. So given that dynamic or lack thereof, then I agree that didn't meet the criteria. But clearly something in the milk ain't clean as it relates to that, because however he got wherever he got, the end result shouldn't lead to death.
Correct.
So I don't. That should have been like a homicide investigation from the beginning. I don't know what they was waiting on to get that started, but
now,
and they still haven't actually officially called it a homicide investigation.
Say again.
I said they haven't even officially called it a homicide investigation right now. It's still not a homicide investigation officially.
Now you were in the detective unit, and we've all worked close with a lot of detectives as far as investigations. Now, is it uncommon for an investigation to not be classified as a crime prematurely so they can hold off on a lot of the public information? Because a lot of times we would write the information report in order to keep it in-house. So a lot of the information that we didn't want to get out there to kind of disrupt the investigation, wouldn't get out there prematurely, so they wouldn't classify it right off until they had a little bit more evidence to go on. Not that nothing was being done, they just paused on classifying it.
this is a little bit different because this would fall under undetermined death, which is automatically followed up by the homicide unit. Whether they call it a homicide or not, they probably wouldn't do that until cause of death is determined.
Yeah.
Whether or not they determine it a homicide, but the homicide unit should be following it up because it's an undetermined death.
Well, let's go back because all three of us have been in patrol. Say that we're patrol officers, we get a call, 15-year-old just recently moved in with his dad, new school. He's got a friend that gave him a dog. That's the only person that he knows in this area. The dad said he never gave him permission. He don't know where he may be. He gives this information. This is his friend's name. This is the only person he may be with. At the very least, as being a patrol officer, you're either gonna send an officer to that residence to make contact, to see if he's over there, to bring his behind back home if he is, or to ask the family, hey, well, have you seen him, or his father's reported missing, or whatever. In this instance, when they did make contact with the family, the son, who's 17 years old, tells the officers that yeah, me and my mom went and picked the boy up, and he said he was gonna leave, and he's gonna walk home. Now, mind you, he lives 20 miles from their residence. I don't know about you guys, but I ain't never walked 20 miles home as an adult.
No, okay, but even getting that statement, and in the back of your mind, yeah, right. You still don't have enough to outright call them a liar and slap handcuffs on them. All you have is, okay, let me document what they said, see if it leads someplace before your shift ends, fine. But based on what you're telling me, you made contact with them, they gave you their statement. You have no way of saying whether it's true or not. So you have to take it for what it's worth with a question mark and forward it to the homicide detective of the missing person detective, and they have to dig deeper as a patrolman. We can't just outright say you're a damn lie and put them in jail. I mean, their statement is what it is unless we find something more to go on.
Right.
I think that was enough to initiate some immediate kind of peripheral search, just to, if for no other reason, CYA.
Yeah.
Bring the air unit up and let them fly around. Call the missing person unit and go, hey, this is what I got, and let them determine, if they need to bump this up or if it's just write the report and send it to me. Because I'm thinking at a minimum, NCIC should have been notified.
Well, wouldn't that have been done with the missing person report being forwarded? Once they got it, they would have entered into NCIC automatic.
Yeah, but because it's a juvenile, and then particularly after you speak to these people and they're like, well, he said he left here. So, I mean, that's questionable circumstances. Me personally, I'd call NCIC right then just to get it into the system.
Yeah.
Because you don't know what you're dealing with at that point. Because like you said, that although that was their statement is shaky at best. And like Smoke say, you 20 miles from the house. So the last time he was seen was with y'all. And now y'all telling us you don't know where he at too. So yeah, I would have got the air unit up and it's called NCIC and got the missing person detective en route or something on the phone or something.
Yeah. But but that still wouldn't have triggered the Amber Alert. That would have gotten them into the NCIC. A bolo would have got
put out. It may have if you call the missing person detective, they may have done it.
Mm-hmm. But see, they didn't contact.
They may have escalated.
Right, and like you said, the immediate response, getting that circumstance, I put myself in that situation as a parent. If my child has a child over visiting, hey, so and so want to come, we go pick him up so we can come play with him for a little bit, and he's over there, and the kid says, hey, I'm finna leave, and I know it's been 20 miles, and I had to go drive over there to pick him up, and then my son said he's ready to go home, or the kid say, hey, I'm ready to leave, I'm gonna go home. My child should have enough sense, or I'm gonna say, hey, where's so and so, and my child is gonna either tell me, hopefully, well, I know how I got my kids, they would say, hey, so and so ready to go home, and I'm taking them back home, drop them off where we picked them up at. I'm not gonna let them walk 20 miles home, because as a parent, as an adult, that's my responsibility. And so, another thing is that once he left, once the detective found out that, well, say a patrol officer found out that, okay, this kid says that he said he's leaving, he's going home. The father said that he's new in town. Now, you know how we know. If you're new in town, you're not going to know the area as an adult. So as a kid, 20 miles from your house, you definitely not going to know where you're going. So I'm going to contact the detective. Seem like, and with these small parishes, these small towns like that, 9 times out of 10, like they said, they relied on the state patrol to issue Amber Alerts. So at least contact the state patrol and put the ball in their court and let them make that determination. Now, had that happened, I don't know, but they stated that the county that the boy that Bobby was found in, he was actually the sheriff's department. Once they found out about it, that he was missing, they pinged his cell phone, which automatically narrowed the area where he was at, where his phone was pinging at. So that's where they went to, and that's where they found him the same day.
See, all of that could have been escalated the moment you talk to the last person that saw him, and when they decide or they let you know that they don't know where he is, okay, then you start doing all of that. Because at that point, I don't think it's just a regular missing person at that point. Because I was given some information where the last, place he was known. Then I go talk to y'all, and y'all saying, well, we don't know where he at either. Yeah, he was with us, but he ain't with us no more. Yeah, I think
Now-
I think I'm gonna escalate it a little bit.
But now,
And
now
I'm a
see,
detective- if
I
I'm a
mean-
detective and I get out there and I found his, matter of fact, as a patrol officer, I found a body, and I'm sure you guys too, you walked out, you know how, 2 feet of water is nothing. So you walk out and you got a body that's found face down in 2 feet of water. And like they say, he's 5'6". First thing I'm gonna think is, damn, how'd this happen? That's not like he fell down. He could have got back up if he fell down. They
Right.
didn't say he had alligator drag marks or anything like that on him. Only thing was disfigured was his face, supposedly from the aquatic life. And I don't know how much aquatic life is gonna be in the sugarcane field.
Sam, you was about to say something.
I would just bring that comment when Smoke said, as a responsible parent, he would do this, and this. So my question would be, does being an irresponsible parent make it criminal? So a lot of parents, don't do the responsible thing to call the parent of the child to make sure that it's okay with that parent. A lot of parents don't make sure that that child gets home, especially when they're at an age of 15 or 16. It's not like they were 10, 9 or 10. So irresponsible parents don't always make their actions criminal. So I understand what you're saying, what you would have done, and probably most people out there listening to this discussion would say what they would have done as parents. But I know a lot of them that have these teenage children, and no, they're not going to run behind them. They're not going to babysit them. It's like, okay, you just be back home or call me when you get to your destination. So it's not uncommon for an adult to babysit a 15-year-old like that. So, that's all. I just wanted to make that point. So it's going to be a lot of Monday night quarterbacking because the worst that could happen happened. And so now everybody, is going to go with woulda, coulda, shoulda. But I'm just saying, under normal circumstances, a lot of times, a lot of people wouldn't have did a lot of things that they did. And even under law enforcement, they have a protocol and a process that they must go through. Because you said, hey, I would have pinged this phone. If I'm mistaken, you got to get a court order, right? And if you're trying to access people's phones and do all the pinging and getting records, don't you have to get a subpoena for that?
No, not for as a detective. You can contact the cell phone carrier and have them to ping and say, hey, I got a missing person. Tell them the criteria, give them the report number, and they'll ping the phone. You're not getting any information except finding their location. But as a patrol officer, if a child, this 17-year-old tells you, hey, this 15-year-old said he was leaving, and you know that he's 20 miles from his home, that right there is going to let me know, hey, I need to call somebody because this kid is 20 miles from his house. I need to call a detective. This is over my pay grade. It just don't smell right. Let me cover myself and notify, somebody who that at least get it off my plate.
Yeah,
So
I think at that point, it should have been escalated at that point. It may not have changed the outcome, but at least people won't be looking at the police work in a negative way, because they can at least track, your efforts and go, okay, well, they were putting forth the effort to at least track the kid down, or at least do the things that police are expected to do when you run up on something like this.
Now I'll put a twist in it. If had that been the mayor's son, would they done the same thing?
Oh no,
Well,
the mayor's son, they pulling out all the stops.
They pulling out all the
I'm
stops.
still-
But we know we live in a society where privilege, takes precedence. So, that's another conversation that,
Right.
if the mayor or the sheriff or even the lieutenant, if it was one of their children, it's going to take a whole different turn,
Mhm.
but that's just, the way our society is, which don't make it right. But we all know that, if you got a little bit of influence, a little bit of status in society, you get extra. And I ain't saying it's right.
Hey,
Preferential
that's a
treatment.
hey, that's a great segue into our next one. Our next topic. The 16-year-old and the 18-year-old that was involved in a police shooting in Cocoa Beach, Florida. I think it happened, last week?
Yeah.
Got some information on that. Okay, here we go. The deaths of Angelo Crooms and Sincere Pierce. Angelo Crooms is 16, Sincere Pierce is 18, and Cocoa neighborhood on November 13 captured national interest, and it provoked some protests. Family and community members state that police offered very little information about what happened in the days after the shooting, and many questioned whether the use of deadly force was merited. Civil rights attorney Ben Crump, we've heard his name before, who represents the families of the two teens, came to Brevard County on Saturday with his co-counsel, Natalie Jackson, and stated they would seek justice. Brevard County Sheriff's deputies, Santiago Miranda, that's ironic, Santiago Miranda, Jafet Santiago Miranda, and Carson Hendren were placed on paid administration leave after they were involved in an officer-involved shooting. Okay, this is what happened during the shooting. Crooms was 16 and Pierce was 18, were both of Cocoa, died Friday after being shot by Santiago Miranda. Brevard County Sheriff Wayne Ivey said that they charged the deputy in their car. Santiago Miranda and Hendren were attempting to stop the vehicle, which they said matched a possibly stolen car that fled a traffic stop in the area. The attorney Jackson, attorney for the aunt, Pierce's aunt, the 18-year-old's aunt, and the family members said that a family friend actually loaned the car to the boys. At a rally, the lawyers of the family blamed the deputies for not running a check on the car's license plate before attempting to stop. With guns drawn out. Say 4 days after the shooting, a dash cam footage was released, and Sheriff Ivey pointed out that the deputy repeated commands to stop, and the vehicle, who was Crooms, the 16-year-old, accelerated the vehicle toward the deputy, Santiago Miranda, who was forced to then fire his service weapon in an attempt to stop the deadly threat of the car from crashing into him. Sheriff said that you can actually see the tires of the vehicle turn sharply in the video as the car accelerates toward the deputy. After immediate danger of being struck, he started firing. And he says Santiago Miranda fired his service weapon at least 9 times. Families contend that the video shows that Crooms was trying to avoid the deputy. Crump and Jackson focused on how the vehicle had not been reported stolen, and Crooms, which is a 16-year-old, had permission by the vehicle's owner to use it. And I think they said that once the vehicle was stopped, they found 2 firearms inside the vehicle. And that's all the information they gave about that. Now, the deputy involved in the shooting, the newly released documents that was today on behalf of Santiago Miranda, months before the shooting. The incidents include a reported physical confrontation and alleged threats against a Titusville police officer. Documents show that Santiago Miranda had a record of minor violations of agency policy, which included twice being cited for improper procedure while attempting to stop fleeing vehicles. They said, according to former Acevedo Police Chief Chuck Drago, investigators will have to look at each and every shot fired into the vehicle and during the incident. Each use of force will be justified under Florida law, needs to be justified under Florida law, and each bullet counts as a separate use of force. From the video, you can see the bullet holes in the side of the car. This is what the chief is saying, ex-chief is saying. said, that gives reason for a lot of questions. If the officer's life is in danger, is it still in danger once the car has passed him? Added Drago, who worked regularly as an expert witness in court cases. Drago also said he was surprised to see the sheriff declare the shooting justified on social media days after it took place and long before FDLE investigation was completed. So we've
So
was there-
what was the actual officer reason for pulling the trigger?
If you saw the video, and I want to take time to thank our people that's on our Retired Voices of Reason page, because that's where we get a lot of our content for the hot topics that we discuss. And the video was posted on the page. It appears that the first officer had been following the vehicle. I guess it was suspected as being a stolen vehicle. Another officer, once the officer got behind the vehicle and they made a left turn, the other patrol car, which is Santiago Miranda, it appears right behind that vehicle. So they, how the first vehicle is generally the chase car, and the second vehicle is the one that uses the radio.
Right.
They went maybe a few feet, and the first car, the suspect's car, people who got shot, their car made a left turn into and 2 houses down, they made a right turn into a driveway. And at that point, the first officer parked in the street on the right-hand side. The second officer parked in the street on the left-hand side, which practically kind of blocked the road, had a short space in between the 2 cars. The vehicle, you see the vehicle that was behind, backed out of the driveway, and then started accelerating toward the officers. Officer Santiago Miranda several times said, stop the vehicle, which the car stopped. You can see it like a abrupt jerk. They stopped a couple of times. It went forward, stopped, went forward, stopped. Then you see the wheels turn sharply to the right, and then it accelerated. At that point, Officer Santiago had already stepped out from behind his vehicle, and he was approaching the vehicle with his handguns drawn, and the vehicle was coming toward him, and that's when he began to fire. And as the vehicle was passing past him, he continued firing, which was a total of 9 shots. I believe the vehicle came into rest. I don't know if it hit the house it was on the corner that was right there, and like it's like a curve where the street turns. So if they would have went over the curve, they'd been home free. But I don't know if the vehicle actually hit a house or it come to an abrupt stop or what that point was. But as we were talking earlier, this kind of reminded me of the incident with the ex-JSO officer, Terry Shirley, that got disciplined and fired from JSO for, they said that he had placed himself in danger by stepping in front of the vehicle. And shot, saying that you can't put yourself in danger and say that you're in fear for your life. But as of right now, the FDLE is investigating, and from what the reports are and what the press got from their investigation, of course they get the open records request, and they got the information that also Santiago Miranda, this is not his first conflict with use of force toward fleeing vehicles. So I'm gonna read this part right here because it ended on him having been involved in disciplinary action before, well, and lack of. And we've always talked about, if you know, a lot of people, they keep passing the buck. You get away with one thing, it's minor, they keep getting away with something, stuff, it escalates into, generally use of force issues. And that's when it gets, out of control. But this is the deputy, Brevard County Sheriff Deputy who fired the shots that killed the Cocoa teens last week, exhibited a pattern of violence and rash behavior in connection with a domestic violence dispute in the months leading up to the shooting, according to the Titusville police records. Records show that defense Santiago Miranda was placed on administrative leave by the Brevard County Sheriff's Office in April of 2020, following allegations that he threatened a person with whom his wife, who the person he threatened was a Titusville police officer, was reportedly having an affair. His wife was having an affair with, reportedly telling her that that individual needed to wear a bulletproof vest. The allegations are detailed in the police case stemming from an incident that same month. Police said Santiago Miranda battered his estranged wife, Frances Santiago, during a dispute which he held her against her will and caused bodily injury. At the time, the report said Santiago Miranda had been told by the sheriff's office to stay away from his wife. According to the report, his employer, the Brevard County Sheriff's Office, told him that it was in his best interest to stay away from his wife, Frances, and her residence, and placing him on administrative leave status regarding all allegations of violence in which he was the subject. The allegations and the incident did not result in his arrest or formal charges, and the Sheriff's Office allowed Santiago Miranda to return to active patrol duty just months before last week's shooting that led to the deaths of Sincere Pierce, 18, and Angelo Crum, 16. Neither the Sheriff's Office nor Titusville Police Department responded to inquiries of the case. Efforts to reach Santiago has been unsuccessful. Incident was released to the Florida Today press by the state attorney's office after they did a records request. Let's see, the April confrontation stemmed from marital problem and ongoing custody dispute over the daughter occurred in front of the child and was caught on cell phone video and audio recording. According to the report, at one point during the struggle in which Santiago Miranda told investigators he was restraining his wife while waiting for police after she forcibly entered his apartment. His wife was heard on audio making a noise very similar of being grabbed and gasping and telling Mr. Santiago Miranda that she could not breathe. He told his wife that she heard him and now it's time for her to hurt. And then she said he's going to jail because this was taken too far. And the police report wrote in the report that his actions were excessive. He said that Santiago Miranda ignored his daughter's pleas to let her mother go as he continued to pull his wife's hair and hold her in various positions against her will. Titusville police, who was wearing body cams, arrived while the struggle was still occurring in response to multiple 911 calls. The incident left the woman with injuries to her neck, upper torso, and leg, the report said. State Attorney's Office in June declined to file charges against Santiago Miranda for domestic battery and child neglect in connection with the incident. They cited that it was insufficient evidence. Said after reviewing the camera and sworn statements, the state cannot conclusively determine if the wife entered the residence prior to the use of force. The suspect, which is Santiago Miranda, claims that the complainant, which is wife, unlawfully entered his residence and he was restraining her until law enforcement arrival. There were conflicting statements between the witnesses whether the entry occurred prior to the use of physical force. Titusville police investigated the couple's rocky relationship and they feared for the safety of his wife, who was then a detective with the Department of Titusville. So his wife was a police officer, was a detective. Santiago Miranda's supervisors at the sheriff's office told him that it was at his best interest to stay away from his wife following an incident reported to the agency the day before the confrontation in which he allegedly threatened the person who he accused his wife of having an affair. Threats were directed at the individual she was having an affair with and the need for the other individual to wear a bulletproof vest. Allegations led the sheriff's office to temporarily remove Santiago Miranda from his duties and place him on administrative leave. It's not immediately clear when he was clear to return to patrol duty following incidents or whether he was reprimanded or received any other forms of discipline. Records also detailed other incidents between the deputy and his wife, including a previous violent conversation, which a neighbor said that Santiago Miranda was attacked by his wife, who the neighbor described as extremely aggressive and she was on top of him. Neither the sheriff's office nor FDLE confirmed if the vehicle drawn by Crohn's was stolen or mistakenly targeted or as contended by the relatives. The sheriff's office, and this is regarding the shooting with the 16 and 18-year-old. Sheriff Ivey said 2 firearms were recovered from the vehicle, but he provided no details. Case is currently under investigation by the FDLE, Florida Department of Law Enforcement, which anticipates the finding will present it to the state attorney's office for review within 60 to 90 days. He said, we have a deputy with a record showing some type of domestic issue. It's placed on administrative leave. We have to hold people accountable, said Natalie Jackson, which is the attorney for the Pierce family. And Santiago Miranda was named as the Sheriff's Office Deputy of the Month in January 2019, and he's also received a life-saving award for his role in helping to save a life of a man who passed out and nearly drowned while swimming in the ocean near Cape Canaveral. So he's
I'm gonna
had
go
a,
out on the limb and say that when FDLE gets done, they're probably not gonna rule in favor of him as far as that shooting goes. Probably because of all those other factors that fall into that.
now did you guys watch the video? You see the video?
No, I have
There-
not seen the video.
He was standing in front of the vehicle and he shot a couple of rounds, and then as he moved to the side and the vehicle went past him, he continued to shoot. So you have shots not only in the windshield, but in the driver's window and in the rear passenger window, you have shots. So if anything, I can see he was in danger for his fear for his life with the shots in the windshield. I can see that all day, every day. But as far as the ones on the side, the passenger side, I mean the driver's side and the rear passenger side on the driver's side, that's going to be kind of difficult because no longer are you in fear for your life if that vehicle is passing by you.
Unless you can articulate shots being fired at you, which that wasn't the case. So
Sam, what's your idea?
Yeah,
What's your,
you know, I try to be fair and consistent. And, you know, the first thing I want to, you know, I try to take my personal feelings out of it and try to say, okay, let's apply the rule of law. Let's be consistent how it's going to be for everybody under whatever the circumstances are. So I always like to go first to what the law says, then what the policy says, and then what training dictates. That's all I can speak to, you know, because as law enforcement officer, that's all we task with, you know. So first, I needed to clarify when we say the vehicle was suspected of being stolen. I need to know, was there a report of it being stolen? How did this suspicion of it possibly being stolen came about? Because that what prompted police attention, you know? So once the police got attention to this vehicle, you know, whether it was up under criminal circumstances or suspicious circumstances, they tried to make contact with the drivers, right? The drivers appeared to be trying to elude them. So it wasn't like they tried to conduct a traffic stop and the driver stopped and, you know, was compliant. Here's my license, here's my insurance. Yes, it's my aunt's car, she let me borrow. There was no engagement. The driver was trying to elude law enforcement. The lights were on, siren was on. Go ahead.
no, that's one point I forgot to mention. There were no lights and sirens on in the video.
Okay. But they was aware that law enforcement
They
was
were just
behind them,
following,
right?
they were just following behind them. They were just, one car had been behind them. I don't know how long that car was behind them, but when they made that left turn, that's when the second car got behind the other police officer's car. Then they made a left. At no time did they see any, that I saw, there was no lights on the initial car that was directly behind them. There was no police lights on.
Okay.
were
Now I
there
saw
any
the video.
lights engaged at all?
I saw the video, and from the dash cams, you're not able to see lights flashing in the daytime. So what we saw was dash cam. So again, I can't say whether the lights was on. And from the video I saw, the second vehicle never came into the other officer's dash cam, which gave a full view of the second vehicle. So I never saw lights on or off, but I did not hear a siren. But it's obvious that the occupant, the driver of the vehicle, knew that there were two marked units behind him. That's obvious. Okay. Now, the street that I saw the video, the street that he was initially going down? Was it a cul-de-sac? Was it a dead end? Could he have continued straight? Because my question was, what caused him to make that right turn into that driveway and then back out? And when you say, well, he moved forward and then put it in reverse, he was doing a 3-point turn because the direction that he was going, he did not continue. He just made a right into the driveway. So my question is, was it a dead end street? Why didn't you just continue going? But either way, he wanted to go in the opposite direction with 2 police cars blocking that direction. So he made a 3-point turn. It wasn't like he was just casually driving, doing his own thing. He was trying to elude officers. He made a 3-point turn going back into the direction of 2 vehicles, two marked units in the middle of the street, 1 officer outside the vehicle, guns drawn, saying stop the vehicle. That 3-point turn, if you looked at the video, if he was going if you're looking at it, if he was going to go to the right, it would have taken him back into the street where the 2 police vehicles was. And like you said, he probably couldn't have gotten in between them. So his only escape route was to go left, and that would be to cut across another resident's driveway and possibly across the yard. That's where the officer was already outside his vehicle, gun drawn. So he did not step into harm's way. He was already there telling the driver, stop the vehicle. And a lot of time we already inching towards that vehicle, just trying to get close enough. But he never got up on the vehicle. That driver did that 3-point turn, and he actually cut into the direction of the officer. And it wasn't like he was going far right. He was veering in the direction of the officer from what I can see. So my point being is, if we're going to call it, I'm going to call it like it is. And I know that, we try to make, I ain't going to say excuses for a lot of our people, but I don't want to keep going down that rabbit hole that every time one of our people, something terrible happens, we want to we know there's a lot of law enforcement that's done a lot of bad things recently, but that don't mean they're all doing the bad things intentionally. Sometimes we just got to look at it for what it is. This was an unfortunate incident. It could have been prevented, but they tried to elude officers. They would not comply, and he did use that vehicle as a weapon and drove in the direction of that officer. So I'm saying it was a justifiable shooting unless somebody show me more. And then, Smoke, I'm good with this, but we often say when African American, a person of minority, they get charged with a crime or they've been a victim of police brutality. We often talk about the media. First thing they want to do is bring up that guy's history and try to make him look like he's a sinister person. What he did in the past don't have anything to do with what he did at that time in the moment. It may come out in court. It may come out doing sentencing. It may come out to show a pattern of behavior. But for the incident that we're talking about right now, we just talking about, let's stick to the facts. So the history of all what that officer did, what's the relevance of it at this point? Make it come out when he have been shown to have violated the law or violated policy or did something outside of training. Then we could bring all that in, because that's going to be a part of, his hearing, or if they charge him criminally, that's going to come out in criminal. But again, painting the officer as this villain at this point, I think that's out of line. I would just stick to the facts of what happened at that time and moment.
Well,
wasn't one of the complaints that he was investigated for within the agency for improperly stopping cars or not having PC to stop cars or something like that?
There was two of them, two previous violations of, traffic stops
So that,
involving
I would say that's
vehicles
completely
eluding.
relevant to this shooting.
Right. And another thing is, like I said before, I can see the shots in the windshield while the vehicle's approaching. You're in danger for your life. You fear, your threat is there, but the threat is no longer if it's on the side. He's gonna have to justify those shots from the side. The vehicle is no longer a threat. So those, like I said, I can see, push come to shove, I can see the ones in front and the windshield. But when you're shooting through the driver's side window and also the rear window on the driver's side, that vehicle is no longer those. And like the witness, the expert witness, that's an ex-chief, he stated that every shot is a use of force. That's your response. That's a separate case. Every shot, and there was a total of 9 shots. So, like I said, the ones in the front, I have no problem with those, but the ones on the side, that's the excessive part that I have a hard time swallowing.
I agree. I mean, I do think the prior complaints are relevant to the stop, because now we get into something you said, Sam. What made that car be suspected of being stolen?
Right.
So you
And
you compare that to the fact that this dude had some sketchy traffic stops already.
And I'm like you said, but let's find out, or let's verify, was it a legitimate stop or was it some bogus? Oh, I saw him. What's the one that they use where you veer into across the center lane? Where they use something.
Fair to maintain a single lane.
Yeah, or he didn't have on his blinker. Those are the type of infractions that officers use to really push the traffic stop. But if this was a legitimate vehicle that was reported stolen, even if it was an unauthorized temporary use or something, I just need to know what was the real reason that we can verify that brought the attention to those officers to stop that particular vehicle at that particular time. That's all I'm just trying to say.
And like we said before, I think that's a big thing that's causing a lot of the protests and a lot of the conflict is the lack of transparency. I mean, you can give the reason why the car was being stopped. That should not be confident. I mean, it's like, okay, you can give that information. It shouldn't be a secret. Yeah. You know what I mean? I can see this was a 16-year-old driver. He looked like he was too young to be driving this car. He looked like he possibly may have stolen a car. They have a lot. I mean, you know what I mean? Mm-hmm. But maybe that's why they stopped. If that's the case, say that. But don't say it was a suspected stolen vehicle. Either was suspected, it was stolen or it wasn't. Once they got
that's the thing that I have an issue with is we're saying, or they're saying it was a suspected stolen vehicle, but the person making that claim got shoddy traffic stops on their record. So I don't trust that. So tell me what made that car be like, because I can tell you the cars that I've attempted to stop that I thought were stolen because they had high beams on and they wouldn't disengage them, or the vent window was broken out. Mm-hmm. Those are things that I could articulate and go, okay, that's an indication of a stolen vehicle. I would suspect that's a stolen car because they're coming at me with bright lights on and they won't disengage them. Well, what does that mean? Well, that means to me that they popped the steering column, and in doing so, it engaged the high beams. That was a significant telltale for me that there's a stolen car that's approaching me. Or the vent window. That was like an automatic. You saw that, you like, yeah, that's a 10. So stuff like that. But absent of that, you're talking about a guy that's got complaints that he been making bad traffic stops. So I ain't listening to what he say as it relates to why you stopped this car. Your record bad.
Yeah, but I need verification
Right.
But you know, I need verification. You know, why I need to know, why did you stop the vehicle? You know, and then I can question your history all, but right now I got to deal with the facts and the evidence. And that's just the way I tried to be as a law enforcement. And I could use my suspicion, you know, reasonable suspicion. I get all that. But when it comes down to it, it's not what I think. Is pretty much where the evidence leads me, you know. And that's why I wasn't a very not zealous, but I wasn't one of those officers that was looking for stuff, because I'm like, if I'm wrong and I cross that line trying to make something out of nothing, you know, then I could end up hurting somebody or somebody hurting me. So I tried to stick to what I could prove. I wasn't out there beating the trees looking for stuff. You know, I'm like, hey, crime gonna go on for the next 1,000 years with or without me. I'm gonna get what I get when I get it. But that's just me. And so we talk about, you know, how officers be out there harassing people and why'd you stop me? You know, if it ain't there, it ain't there. But if it is, I'm gonna go after it. But I ain't gonna be. I'm just be honest. I disengage being that overzealous officers just trying to make stuff happen. I seen too many officers get hemmed up. They started getting questioned on, you know, why they did this and why they did that. I just made it real simple. If I can prove it, then I'll act on it.
And see, I was the assertive one. That's what I did. I was the questioner. I wanted to know, you know. But like you said, I'm going to do in the letter law. If it wasn't probable cause, if it was 3 guys standing on the corner, they just stand on the corner. They just stand on the corner. Now, if I see them, a car stop, and they do a transaction, you know, I see something exchange, that car is stopping past the stop sign, or that car is, you know, in the right of way. You know, that's giving me probable cause to believe, especially in the area I'm at. If I know this person has a history of selling drugs and I see an exchange, and if I don't see an exchange, I'm not going to do anything.
Yeah.
But if I see something, I'm going to do something. I'm going to get in your business. And if it ain't nothing there, you know, I'm going to tell you why I stopped and all this, and then have a nice day. But, you know, I'm not going to try to fit a square peg in a round hole, and that's just how I used to operate.
Yeah.
But I'm glad LJ brought up the stolen car with the bent window. That's one of the telltale signs. Usually that back, when we say bent window for the non-law enforcement people, it's usually that rear window that's the smallest, shaped like a triangle. And that's going to be the case of the next thing our next topic is another officer involved shooting that happened in Jacksonville. Was it last week? Mm-hmm. Which was kind of it was a violent crime task force. They was out, I believe, near San Juan and Cassett. Mm-hmm. And the vehicle, they did release the vehicle. JSO did release the video from the body cams. And it was the driver's side rear passenger vent window was broken out. You can clearly see it. They approached the vehicle. They also smelled, it was 4 officers. They smelled marijuana in the vehicle in addition to the broken vent window, which gave them probable cause to be able to stop the vehicle. Once they stopped the vehicle, they smelled the marijuana. That's additional probable cause to get inside the vehicle. So first thing they did was got the driver out of the vehicle. Now, I believe, I don't know if it was 4 people in the vehicle or 3, I can't remember, but they initially got the driver, handcuffed him, got him out of the vehicle. The front passenger, he began to reach underneath the seat, and then he kept yelling to the driver, hey, tell my mom I love her, tell so-and-so I love him, and he told the rear passenger, hey, don't make mistakes like I did, and just do what you're supposed to do. And the officers kept telling him, let me see your hands, let me see your hands. And they tried to talk to him, I guess, for maybe about 15 minutes. And subsequently, there was a shot, and then all 4 of the officers shot the front passenger. From what the reports are, that he died by shooting himself, which, a lot of times they call that suicide by police. If they want to commit suicide, they want to kill themselves, but they don't really know if they had the courage to do it. So they ensure that they're going to die by making the police shoot them. So that may have been the case in this incident because he was on the phone, talked to his aunt, I believe, at one point. But I mean, that's one of those things, emotions ran high, people getting upset. Why did the officer shoot? I mean, you got a gunshot, you got a person, you standing on the side of the road, you got like I said, you got a broken vent window, possibly a stolen car. A lot of stolen vehicles are used in other crimes like drive-bys, homicides, drug deals, things of that nature. So you don't know what you got. At least you know you got a possible stolen vehicle. And then you got a non-cooperative individual in the front passenger seat with a hand underneath the seat. I believe it was a 45 underneath the seat.
So here's my concerns with this is, if we say we got the vent window and we whip behind that car and we blue light them and they pull over, what does that become?
It's a traffic stop.
It's a known risk traffic stop, which there is a prescribed way you conduct a known risk traffic stop, which means none of them should have been at those windows. So that is my, I'm a traffic stop expert now. We can do this all night. That is one of my gripes with that scenario, because you shouldn't have been close enough to see him reaching under the seat at all, because that's a known risk traffic stop. Because you just said you saw the vent window, you suspect a stolen car, that's a felony, known risk.
Let me
Go
interject what I saw in the video. They did extract one or two people. So it appears to me that a felony stop was conducted. So the reason they were able to see him reaching and see his movement, because when they extracted the driver's door was open. So they wasn't all up on the driver's door. It was open and they could actually see in. And I could see.
No, they weren't on it, but they weren't behind the wall of lights the way we're trained to conduct known risk traffic stop. They weren't behind that wall of light. They were in front of the wall of light.
Yeah, it wasn't a felony stop. That wasn't a felony traffic stop. Felony traffic stop, first thing you do, have the driver turn the vehicle off, throw the keys out on the ground, have him to exit the vehicle. You have the people to exit the vehicle one by one, and you remove them, have them walk back to you, the officers, who LJ said, like I said, you have a tactical wall. You have them walk back to the vehicle, and you have one officer handcuff him while the others cuff her. This incident, they were all up on the vehicle. They didn't do that.
Everybody was out except this one, the front seat passenger.
But they were out, but they didn't conduct a known risk traffic stop, at least not from what was in that video. They were, and my threshold for that is, are you in front of the wall of lights or are you behind it?
They was in front because the rear passenger was still inside the vehicle, because the front passenger was still turned around talking to the rear passenger. He was inside the vehicle when the shooting occurred.
Wasn't there a self-inflicted wound as well?
It was one self-inflicted wound, and and then the other officer shot. Like I said, all four of the officers shot, and that was my concern. It's like all four of the officers shooting, when you got a passenger in that's the weapons discipline was like out the window with me, and I'm a very tactical person, and I just it grinds me when I see non-tactical stuff happen. It just it's like and it may be due to, I believe, two of the officers were less than 3 years on, 3 or less, no, less than 5 years on. One 10-year officer and another, I believe, was on 20 years.
So my other concern, aside from the known risk, unknown risk traffic stop stuff not being right, is when the shot was fired or they heard the gunshot, for everyone that fired their weapons, what did you see that caused you to fire your weapon? Not what you heard, what did you see? Because in the I think the one time of me serving a search warrant and a gunshot was fired as we're approaching the door, none of us in the stack fired. but somebody shot at us. Now, if we had fired, I would not have been able to justify of anything that I personally saw. So I would be curious to have each one of those officers explain, what did you see before you pulled the trigger, or that caused you to pull the trigger? And was it just because you heard a gunshot?
Right. I mean, if the guy committed suicide, obviously, you know, he wasn't pointing the weapon at any of the officer. He was, if it was self-inflicted. So,
Right.
you know,
So what did y'all see that caused you to shoot this dude? So it leads me to think, because the only person that I'm thinking that had a really good view of what he was doing was the guy on the officer on the passenger side, where he was. The officer on the driver's side couldn't see. From that camera angle, he couldn't see what he was doing. But and then my last peripheral kind of issue was what I posted about this incident was the whole marijuana thing. But I think those other two are more important from an officer perspective. Because like I said, you stop a car, you think stolen, it's got indicators that it's stolen. That traffic stop is there's a specific way that traffic stop is supposed to be conducted. And to conduct it outside of that, now you're violating policy. So basically anything that happens after you have stepped outside of policy, you're on the hook for. Because you are out, what they say, you operating outside the umbrella. You operating outside the umbrella.
But knowing how they comprise the task forces and the officers that they choose to be on the task force, is generally they're going to actually get the benefit of the doubt, because as we talked before, a lot of we're going to be, you know, not that it's because of their work performance, it's going to be because of who they know and the cliques they belong to.
And I mean, I'm okay with that. I was on a task force primarily because of those same things. So I don't have an issue with that. But the things that are basic and fundamental as it relates to doing the job, you don't get to skirt that because of your affiliations. So again, I'm gonna go back to, we got a vehicle that we suspect is stolen based on our experience with a broken vent window and usually indication of a stolen car. That's a known risk traffic stop. There's two kinds, known risk and unknown risk. And there's two ways to conduct them, known risk and unknown risk. And that's a known risk. It's done one way. And that didn't happen. So when that doesn't happen, everything you do after that, you are outside of the policy of the sheriff's office.
Like I said, you're going to have the finger on the scale type of thing situation. But as you said before, those shots are going to have to be justified. You have to justify why you are fearing for your life or the life of other people. Was a gun, and like you said before, was that a person having a gun pointed at themselves? The only person they're a threat to is themselves.
Yeah,
So
I would be curious to hear what the officers say. What did they see that caused them to pull the trigger? I would be curious to hear that.
And from what I've looked at different reports and different stories on it, and from what I can ascertain, I believe that his fatal shot was, he shot himself. His self-inflicted wound was to his chest, which meant the gun had to be pointed toward himself.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, it may have been, like I said, I can see one person possibly having a nervous reaction, you know, a automatic one shot or a couple of shots, but everybody to shoot, knowing there's a passenger inside the vehicle, because bullets don't have names on them. And so he could have actually been it could have been a tragic situation.
I mean, The one that I'm gonna give the at least the best angle to fire his weapon was the officer that was on the passenger side that actually saw him reaching under the seat.
Mhm.
That officer had the tactical view to see that. So that would be definitely my question for him as well is when that shot was fired and you pulled your trigger, what did you see?
I mean, I would even give
Because
him the benefit of the doubt. I can even give him that benefit saying, it was a gunshot. It's dark. I didn't know. I saw a gun. I don't know if it was pointed at me or him. I couldn't see it because it's the visibility. And now it's split second like that. But for everybody else, like you said, what did you see?
so those are the concerns that I had. They didn't follow protocol for no risk traffic stops, and several people pulling the trigger for however many times they pulled the trigger for what? Because they heard a gunshot or because they saw him point a weapon? Like what was the thing that caused them to fire their weapon?
But like Sam said before, the thing that would alleviate all of these situations from even occurring from the jump is compliance. If you're wrong, you're wrong. Take it, man up, take what happens. Comply with non-compliance. An officer, they got family, they got stuff, they thinking about they need to go home. They're in fear for their life. They out there. I mean, it's not like it's working at Subway. You know what I mean?
True.
Not that that's all, because they can get robbed, but still, they're actually putting themselves in a situation that all you got to do is comply. Do what the person tells you to do. If you don't agree with it at the time, live to fight another day. Even if
you darn sure can't be reaching under the seat and expect that to have a good outcome.
No.
That's just the reality of the situation.
And like Sam said before, I don't care if you blue, black, white, green, red, whatever. If you're wrong, you're wrong. If you out of pocket, you out of pocket. Point blank, period.
Big facts.
And I don't want to get too far away from that being the focus. Sometimes we can get caught up in, looking for the worst because there is a pattern, there is bad behavior. If an officer, is found to be guilty of excessive force, deal with him. If he goes outside of policy and training, let's deal with it. My whole thing is let's get the facts, and let's stop jumping to a conclusion and let's start trying to, indict the officers before the investigation is over. We've been asking for that same measure of justice for our citizens, especially for our people of color. We've been asking for that same system of justice. So this pendulum swings both ways. So I don't want to get too far away, to making this all about a black cause. And every time a black get killed, we want to say that officer was wrong. We've been trying to bring clarity as to, from our perspective as being law enforcement officers, to bring out, well, hey, we just trying to apply the law. Here's what the law says. We're trying to say what policy is, and policy can change from department to department, but the intent of most policy, they're going to be pretty much consistent. Training changes constantly. So a lot of time we have to know what is the established written laws and written policy. Outside of all that, we can go with the woulda, coulda, shoulda. We can go with, well, I hope this would have happened. But if we're talking justice, justice is based on knowing what the current policies and laws are and applying it. Now, if those laws and policy still don't net the outcome that we want, then we got to, here we go again, back to this vote. We got to vote in the people who goes to legislation and changes the laws, or goes to the hierarchy. When we talk about leadership, we get them to change the policy. But if if policy and the law is what it is, and officers follow policy or the law, you know, and we still don't agree with it, that officer did what he was ordered to do by law or by policy or within training. You go about looking at what we need to look at our current policies and change those if need be. So again, you know, we came here titled Retired Voices of Reason because we wanted to give some of the civilians some insight on, hey, in case you didn't know, here's what the law says. In case you didn't know, here's what our policy says based on individual department. Here's what training normally dictates. We just wanted to bring a little insight into that. So that's my spiel. Let's keep the focus on justice, you know, and justice, like I said, it swings both ways, you know. And again, if an officer is wrong, let's deal with him. If a citizen is wrong, we got to hold them accountable. This is all about accountability. That comes from the officers, the department, and the citizens, and even sometimes those who are victims. You know, we all have to have personal responsibility and accountability, irregardless of how tragic a situation ends.
It's like the situation in the, I think it was Omaha, Nebraska last week. Another police involved shooting, which I believe was a 35-year-old male. It was 4 people in the car. Police officers they were behind the car. This vehicle was in the middle of the street. I believe it was in the daytime, 10 o'clock in the day or something like that, maybe. Anyway, the vehicle's going, then it stopped, then it drive, then it stopped, then it drive, and it stopped. Of course, all of us having been in patrol, that's suspicious, like, what the hell going on? So a traffic stop was conducted. They got it was 4 people inside the vehicle. One of the people was not compliant. The officers ended up having to bust the window and drag him out and start tussling with him, in which the guy started reaching for his waistband, and he started to reach and pull a 45 out his waist, and he got shot and killed. That's game over. I mean, you play stupid games, you get stupid prizes. That's just point blank, period.
I think something like that, and even on a smaller scale, the one that we were talking about in Jacksonville, on the surface, I don't think a lot of people have an issue with that shooting. My only concern, well, the 2 major concerns, and then the one kind of peripheral concern was, were there things that the officers did that pushed that scenario to the level that it got to? And that's why I brought out there's one way to do a risk traffic stop, which would have prevented you from being close enough to be where you were. And then the other part of that is, when the shot that you heard was fired, when you fired your weapon, what were you looking at? What caused you to fire your weapon? And then the other thing was the marijuana. So they thought they had a stolen car, they smelled marijuana, so they was ordering everybody out. So there are so many traffic stops that end like this that hinge on that one thing: I smell marijuana. So, like I posted, why is marijuana still illegal? Particularly when there are so many police citizen encounters that go bad from an officer going, I smell marijuana. So that was when I posted that was my thinking along those lines. Is a plant is illegal, and there are a lot of police shootings that hinge on, I smell marijuana.
And I'm good with that.
Yeah.
But until the law changed, regardless of how you feel about the legality of marijuana, until the law changed, it still has to be enforced. You know, so all I'm saying,
it does. The problem, though, Sam, is enforced unevenly, and that's the problem. Because if everybody get dealt with the same way, you can make St. Augustine grass illegal for all I care.
And that's what we've been talking about in our discussions is the uniformity application of enforcement. That's what we've been talking about. So again, this is not a debate about legal or illegal. That is what it is. This is not a debate about what policy says or isn't. It's about the consistent, fair application of the law. And if an officer does not operate fairly and consistently, then that is a form of misconduct, which the department should hold him accountable. So now we're back to, is leadership holding their people accountable, or is this a culture? What we're seeing, it might be a culture. And so that's what we're protesting. But the protest is to bring light to a situation in hopes that we can get our legislators to speak on our behalf to get the laws changed. But until then, it is what it is. I mean, Denver, they probably don't have that issue because they made it illegal. But it's a lot of states who haven't adopted that policy as it pertains to marijuana. So until that time comes, a person still may have to hold off on firing up that weed in their vehicle on the streets and highway until they get home.
Right.
I could never understand. Is it so important to get your head right that you got to drink while driving, or you have to fire up that J while driving? You can't wait till you get to the privacy of your own home, because if it's illegal, you just brought attention to yourself.
Right.
Well, with a lot of people having legal marijuana cards now, and I believe Florida is one of the states that they can have you can get a card and have a dispensary. If you're a passenger in a vehicle, that smoke is going to be like cologne on you, cologne or perfume on you. You can't spray that stuff away. So the driver, that's just going to be one of those things he has to deal with. When also approach the vehicle on the traffic stop, he's going to smell marijuana on that person's person, and that person's going to have to man up and say, hey, I got a card. I need to reach him a while, you want to see my card or whatever. But at that point, like I said before, you have to comply. You have to explain. You can't be indignant and say, hey, why are you stopping me? I'm legal and this, it's going to escalate. You got a card, if you legal, you legit, calm down, say, hey, I know you probably smell weed, it's on me. My clothes smell like that because I smoke at home, but I'm not under influence, I'm not driving. I mean, they can be under influence in the passenger seat, but they can't have it on them. So that's
that ain't gonna fly.
It's gonna be a whole, that's gonna be something with training also with the officers, but with a citizen who you're gonna have to be responsible for letting them know, hey, I'm legit. And you got to understand why this officer is coming at you like you committing a crime, because possession of marijuana is a crime unless you have that card. And they're not psychic. They can't see that unless once their investigation, they get to that point, then like I said, they cut you loose. But it's segueing off of the last shooting in Jacksonville with the kid possibly shot himself and killed.
Hey,
this is the time of year where people are going to be we all know that suicide rate is very high around this time, the holidays, between now and New Year's. So that's one of the things if you got people that they have erratic behavior, they start giving away stuff, you need to pay attention to that, because they may be suicidal. If they're having problems, they may be suicidal. If they change their pattern of behavior, they may have thoughts of hurting themselves. If they talk about doing something to themselves, don't just laugh it off like they playing, or you ain't gonna do nothing to us. They may be serious. I mean, those are things we have to look out. We have to be our brother's keepers.
Okay, now, hey, we could probably go another 2 hours. Unfortunately, we're at
not
that
tonight,
time, and we probably need a part two. We probably need a part two for this discussion. So
I'm with that.
I appreciate the differences of perspectives, because it brings more more information to the conversation. So, I would hate if we all were, agreeing on everything. So we're here to learn and grow just like everybody else. I mean, that's what you do when you got people who are sincere in trying to make a change. You get together and you have that meeting of the mind, and you bring out all the different perspectives, and hopefully somewhere along this journey or this path, we can all grow and be better person and have a little bit more insight on the way we look at life and the events in our society. So kudos to you guys. I appreciate you. I love you. Listening audience, keep those comments coming, and we're going to try to keep this thing going.
Smoke.
I want everybody to be safe. It's the holiday season. The traffic unit, LJ, your people, they're going to be out there. Get a designated driver, stay home. Everybody got the COVID, stay at home things, things of that nature. Get your bottle, take it to the house and stay there. You know what I mean? That's that simple. If you got to shop online.
These streets is hot.
The streets gonna be hot.
So that would be one of my things is do as much shopping with your pointer and clicker as much as possible. And if you got to go out, take some folks with you, and make sure your doors are locked. Don't park next to white vans, or any vans for that matter, but particularly white vans. That seems to be the color of choice. But don't park next to white vans, and try to park as close as possible to whatever building you're going to. And try not to park too far away. Wear a mask, and but stay home. As much as possible, stay home. Because they come to your house, then it's a whole nother story. A whole nother story. All right, y'all.
All right.
All hearts and minds clear. We out.
Peace.
We out.